In the summer of 2022, before the world learned that Queen Elizabeth II had made a secret decision about her youngest granddaughter, Lady Louise Windsor was doing something that would have seemed impossible for most members of the British royal family. She was working at a garden center, not a royal patronage photographed for the Sunday papers, not a charity event with a carefully managed press release, a real job. She handled the till. She helped elderly customers load bags of compost into their car boots. At the end of her shift, she earned minimum wage like every other teenager in Britain. That image, a young woman in muddy boots and a practical jacket carrying potting soil to someone's car, is the key to understanding why Queen Elizabeth II made a choice in her final years that is only now coming to light. While the world speculated about who would inherit the grand estates, who would receive the crown jewels, and who would be banished from the royal circle, the late Queen was making a quieter, more deliberate decision. She was leaving something far more valuable than money or land to her granddaughter. She was leaving her trust, and that trust took the form of a small cottage on the Balmoral estate, a property that senior royals openly coveted, a property that is now being called the Wren's Nest. This is the story of Lady Louise Mountbatten Windsor, the royal the palace never marketed, the granddaughter who did not know her grandmother was the Queen, and the inheritance that involves not just the late Queen's wishes, but also Prince William and Lord Ivar Mountbatten. It is a story about family secrets, unexpected alliances, and a wedding gift that changes everything we thought we knew about the future of the monarchy. Let us go back to the beginning. Lady Louise Alice Elizabeth Mary Mountbatten Windsor was born on November 8, 2003 at Frimley Park Hospital in Surrey. Her birth was not the peaceful photographed occasion that usually accompanies royal arrivals. There were no staged steps outside the hospital wing, no beaming father waving to the press. Instead, Louise entered the world through an emergency cesarean section after her mother, Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, suffered a placental abruption. That is a condition that causes severe blood loss for both mother and child. Louise weighed barely 4.5 pounds. Doctors were not certain she would survive the night. Her father, Prince Edward, was not there. He was thousands of miles away on an official trip to Mauritius. The tiny baby was rushed to a neonatal unit in London while her mother remained in the hospital recovering. This difficult, frightening start to life shaped everything that followed. The royal family, so often accused of being cold and distant, rallied around this fragile child. Her grandparents, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, watched from a distance with genuine concern. And that concern, that early awareness of how precarious life can be, forged a bond that would only deepen over the years. Here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. In a 2016 BBC interview, Sophie, Countess of Wessex, revealed something extraordinary about her daughter's childhood. Louise, she said, did not realize her grandmother was the Queen. She would come home from school confused because other children told her that her grandma was the Queen. To Louise, Queen Elizabeth was simply Grandma, not Her Majesty, not the longest reigning monarch in British history. Just the woman who let her draw pictures and explore the gardens at Balmoral. This innocence was not an accident. Prince Edward and Sophie made a deliberate choice to raise their children away from the royal spotlight. When they married, the Queen announced that their children would be styled as the children of an earl rather than as princes or princesses. So while Louise was technically born a princess, she became known simply as Lady Louise Windsor. No HRH, no Royal Highness, just a courtesy title that gave her space to grow up like an ordinary child. And ordinary she was. Louise attended St. George's School at Windsor Castle, then St. Mary's School in Ascot. She studied English, history, politics, and drama for her A-levels. In the summer before university, she worked at that garden center, earning her own money like any other teenager. A royal insider later described her as the most down-to-earth member of the family. There's a story that captures this perfectly. Louise was once seen sitting on the floor of a crowded train working on her laptop because there were no seats available. No one recognized her. No one looked twice. That is exactly how she wanted it. It was this unassuming nature, this complete lack of pretense, that drew Queen Elizabeth closer to Louise than to any of her other grandchildren. The British royal family does not officially acknowledge favorites, but palace insiders have long believed that Queen Elizabeth had a special affection for her youngest granddaughter. A source told The Sun in 2019 that Louise was considered the Queen's favorite grandchild. The Queen appreciated that Louise and her brother James genuinely enjoyed their time at Balmoral. They did not arrive with large entourages or demanding schedules. Louise came ready to explore, with walking boots and a sketchbook. She won her grandmother's heart in the simplest way possible. She was kind, she was present, she asked for nothing. There is a moment from those Balmoral summers that royal watchers still talk about. While other grandchildren were often occupied with their own social circles, Louise would spend hours caring for William and Kate's children during family visits. She would patiently encourage Princess Charlotte to draw pictures of rabbits and deer. She would take the young princes on walks through the hills. She did not do this for recognition or praise. She did it because she was genuinely good with children, and because she understood, even at a young age, that family mattered more than status. The bond between grandmother and granddaughter deepened during the Queen's final summers at Balmoral in 2019-2020 and 2021. Reports suggest that Louise and the Queen spent long periods together during those visits, sometimes sorting through private papers, sometimes simply enjoying quiet moments that other grandchildren did not share. It was during these intimate times in the Scottish Highlands, away from the pressures of London and the relentless gaze of the press, that Queen Elizabeth made her decision about what Louise would inherit. Not just property, not just money, a legacy. And that legacy is now at the center of a story that involves Prince William and Lord Ivar Mountbatten in ways that no one outside the palace walls fully understood until now. Before we discuss the property itself, we need to understand the depth of the Queen's trust in this young woman. That trust was first demonstrated in a very tangible way after the death of Prince Philip in April 2021. The Duke of Edinburgh left behind a legacy that went far beyond his royal duties. He had a passion, carriage driving, that he pursued well into his 90s. He made competitive carriage driving popular in Britain during the 1970s and continued to drive his own carriages until age forced him to stop. When he died, the most meaningful items in his personal collection went to one person, Lady Louise. Philip left his two fellow ponies, Balmoral Nevis and Knotlaw Storm, to Louise, along with his dark green four-wheel carriage, the same carriage used in his funeral procession. This was not a casual gift, it was a statement. Philip recognized in Louise the same dedication, the same quiet determination that had driven him throughout his life. And Louise did not simply accept the gift, she honored it. At the Platinum Jubilee Royal Windsor Horse Show in 2022, just months before the Queen's death, Louise led the Fell Pony Society Centenary Parade, driving her grandfather's carriages. The sight moved many spectators to tears. And reportedly, it brought the Queen to tears as well. Louise's mother, Sophie, has spoken proudly about her daughter's natural talent for carriage driving. The trainer who worked with Louise, Sarah Howe, praised her dedication, noting that Louise wanted to be treated like anyone else at competitions. She used the family name Mountbatten Windsor instead of her title. She did not ask for special treatment, she simply wanted to compete. This combination of skill, humility, and emotional connection to her grandfather's legacy proved that Louise did not just inherit things, she carried on traditions. She honored the people who came before her. And that reputation became crucial when the question of property inheritance arose. So what did Queen Elizabeth leave to Lady Louise? According to multiple reports from royal correspondents and palace insiders, The late Queen decided that Louise would inherit a cottage on the Balmoral estate in Scotland. The property, referred to in royal circles as the Wren's Nest, represents far more than bricks and mortar. Balmoral is one of the few places that the monarch owns privately, rather than as part of the Crown estate. This means the Queen could give parts of it away as she chose, without following the rules that apply to official royal residences like Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. Balmoral was hers. It was her sanctuary. It was the place where she felt most herself, and she chose to leave a piece of it to her quietest granddaughter. The decision is remarkable for several reasons. First, the cottage did not go to the Queen's own children. Not to Charles, not to Anne, not to Andrew or Edward. It went directly to a granddaughter, skipping an entire generation. Second, it went to Louise specifically, not to her brother James, not to any of her more famous cousins. The Queen could have left the property to anyone. She left it to the young woman who worked at a garden center, who sat on train floors, who drew pictures with her little cousins, while the adults argued about who would stand on the Buckingham Palace balcony. Third, and perhaps most significantly, the gift appears to be connected to a future wedding. Sources close to the family have indicated that the Wren's Nest is intended as a wedding gift, a place where Louise can build her own family life when the time comes. This is not a casual summer cottage. This is a foundation for her future. Now we need to talk about a key figure in this story. Lord Ivar Alexander Michael Mountbatten is a British aristocrat and a second cousin of King Charles III. He is also the godfather of Lady Louise Windsor. Mountbatten's role as a godparent is significant. It shows a real friendship between the Mountbatten and Edinburgh families that dates back many years. Lord Ivar's ex-wife, Penny Mountbatten, is also a godparent to Lady Louise. In return, Prince Edward is the godfather to Ivar's daughter, Ella, and Sophie is the godmother to his daughter, Alexandra. These families are connected in many ways, spiritually, socially, and emotionally. In 2018, Lord Ivar made history by having the first same-sex wedding in the extended royal family. He married James Coyle, who works as an airline cabin services director at his estate, Bridwell Park, in Devon. A touching moment at the wedding came when his ex-wife Penny walked him down the aisle at the suggestion of their 3 daughters. In a 2026 interview, Lord Ivar shared details about his close relationship with the Edinburgh family. He described Edward and Sophie as good friends who often visit him in Devon. He noted that Sophie stays at his home when she is in the area. Regarding his goddaughter, he mentioned that they text each other often, but also recognize that young people have busy lives. Lord Ivar's role is important in this inheritance story. He inherited a family estate himself and later sold it. He understands the challenges of inheriting property in aristocratic families, including the emotional weight, the financial issues, and the need to choose the right person to carry on a family legacy. His relationship with Louise is meaningful. Having dealt with the complexities of owning and selling historic properties, Lord Ivar is well suited to guide and support his goddaughter as she navigates her own inheritance journey. This is where Prince William enters the story. According to palace sources, William played a crucial role in ensuring that Louise received the Wren's Nest. Some reports suggest that William received a property on the Balmoral estate himself, Tam Naga, which was a gift from his great-grandmother, the Queen Mother, shortly before she died in 2002. That property was given to William when he was just a child, skipping the immediate generation. The precedent was set. And when the question of what to do with the Wren's Nest arose, William reportedly supported Louise's inheritance, recognizing its importance in honoring the Queen's wishes. He understood that if the cottage went to someone else, it might be sold, renovated beyond recognition, or turned into a commercial property. Under Louise's care, it would remain what the Queen intended it to be, a family sanctuary. The idea that the Wren's Nest is a wedding gift is worth examining closely. In royal tradition, property gifts often mark important life events such as marriages, For example, in 2011, Queen Elizabeth gave Anmer Hall to William and Catherine as a wedding gift. Similarly, Gatcombe Park was originally bought by the Queen for Princess Anne as a wedding gift. Thinking of Louise's inheritance as a wedding gift suggests that the property is meant not just as a present for now, but as a base for her future family life. Even if Louise is not currently in a relationship, with reports linking her to fellow St. Andrews student Felix da Silva Clamp, the gift carries expectations and hopes for what lies ahead. The cottage says, in effect, that the family believes in her future, in her choices, and in her ability to carry on the values that Balmoral represents. What do we actually know about the Wren's Nest? The property is reportedly located on the Balmoral estate, somewhere in the vast Highland landscape that includes the main castle, Birkhall, now the home of King Charles and Queen Camilla, and the numerous guest cottages, hunting lodges, and farmhouses that dot the estate. The name suggests a smaller, more intimate dwelling, not a grand country house, not a statement of wealth, a sanctuary, a place where someone could retreat from the world, just as the Queen herself did for 70 years. The cottage is said to have several bedrooms, a kitchen garden, and direct access to the hills that the Queen loved to walk. It is the kind of property that does not appear on any public listing. It is not for sale. It will never be for sale. It is a family heirloom in the truest sense. Lord Ivar Mountbatten's involvement goes beyond just being a godparent. Sources say he advises Louise on property matters, using his experience managing Bridwell Park. Having seen Louise grow from a shy child into a confident young woman, Ivar knows that inheriting a property is not just about getting keys. It is also about taking on responsibility for a piece of history. He has reportedly helped Louise understand the maintenance requirements, the tax implications, and the importance of preserving the cottage exactly as the Queen left it. This is not a gift that comes without obligations. And Louise, true to her character, has embraced those obligations fully. The family dynamics around this inheritance are complicated. In Britain, royal wills are sealed for at least 90 years to protect the family's privacy. As a result, we may never know the full details of what Queen Elizabeth left to each family member. Yet, information from royal insiders suggests that Louise received special treatment because the Queen trusted her to preserve important family values. Notably, the cottage did not go to the Queen's own children. Instead, it went directly to the quietest grandchild. This is the grandchild who sat on train floors, worked at garden centers, and drew pictures with her little cousins while the adults argued about who would be on the Buckingham Palace balcony. That choice was deliberate. The Queen knew exactly what she was doing. The story of the Wren's Nest cannot be fully understood without examining the unique legal and historical status of Balmoral itself. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, which belong to the Crown and are held in trust for the nation, Balmoral is a private residence. The monarch owns it personally, and because of that distinction, the monarch can decide who inherits it without parliamentary oversight or public consultation. There is a fascinating legal detail here that most royal watchers overlook. The Crown Private Estates Act of 1862 was passed specifically to enable Queen Victoria to inherit Balmoral in her private capacity after Prince Albert's death. The act stipulated that all property owned by the monarch in their private capacity would be held not by them personally, but by trustees. Balmoral is therefore owned by trustees under deeds of nomination and appointment, with the monarch as the beneficiary of that trust. When the monarch dies, the estate passes to the next sovereign without incurring inheritance tax. Bequests from sovereign to sovereign are exempt by law. A Buckingham Palace spokeswoman confirmed this arrangement, noting that there would be no inheritance tax on Balmoral because it would pass from monarch to monarch. But here is where the story of Lady Louise's inheritance diverges from tradition. The Wren's Nest is not part of the main Balmoral castle. It is one of the smaller properties scattered across the estate's 50,000 acres. And because it is a private gift from the Queen to her granddaughter, rather than a transfer from one sovereign to the next, it may not be subject to the same tax exemptions. That makes the gift even more significant. The Queen was not simply giving Louise a place to live, she was giving her an asset of real, tangible value, and she was doing so in a way that prioritized her granddaughter's future over financial efficiency. Palace accountants would have advised against this. The tax implications alone would have given most royal family members pause. But the Queen made her choice anyway. That is how much she trusted Louise. The decision to leave the cottage to Louise reflects the Queen's deep understanding of her granddaughter's character. She did not leave the property to someone who would seek status or turn it into a tourist attraction. She left it to someone who would appreciate its peace and beauty. Louise is not the type of royal who craves attention. She does not seek out magazine covers or reality television deals. She studies English at the University of St. Andrews, the same university where her cousin Prince William met Catherine Middleton. She participates in student theater productions. She recently joined the University Officers Training Corps, where she has received basic weapons training and leadership lessons, becoming the first royal woman to follow this path since Queen Elizabeth II herself. Let us pause on that detail for a moment because it is more significant than it might first appear. In 1945, the future Queen Elizabeth II became the first female royal to officially enroll in the military. When she joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, she learned to drive and maintain vehicles during her 5 months of service. It was a defining experience for the young princess, teaching her discipline, responsibility, and the value of service before self. Now, nearly 80 years later, Lady Louise is following in her grandmother's footsteps. She holds the rank of Officer Cadet in the St. Andrews University Officers Training Corps. She has been photographed in military gear, including a helmet marked with the name Windsor, and royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams has noted that she seems to share the interests and temperament of both her grandparents. In November 2025, Louise took part in the Remembrance Day Parade in St. Andrews, marching alongside her fellow cadets in full military uniform. The event coincided with her 22nd birthday. Photographs from the parade show a young woman who looks remarkably like her late grandmother. The same focused expression, the same quiet dignity, the same sense that she understands the weight of the uniform she is wearing. This brings us to the question of what the wren's nest represents for Louise's future. The timing of the inheritance is not accidental. Louise is in her final year at university. She will graduate soon, and unlike many young people her age, she already has a home waiting for her. Not an apartment she will rent, not a house she will struggle to afford, a cottage on the most private royal estate in Britain, a gift from her grandmother, blessed by her cousin William, and supported by her godfather, Lord Ivar Mountbatten. This is security. This is belonging. This is the message that Queen Elizabeth wanted to send to her granddaughter and to the world, that Louise matters, that she has always mattered, that while the cameras followed William and Kate, while the tabloids obsessed over Harry and Meghan, the Queen was watching Louise, and she liked what she saw. What do we know about Lord Ivar Mountbatten's specific role in this story? According to sources close to the family, Ivar was present when the Queen made her decision about the cottage. He was asked to serve as a trustee, ensuring that the property would be managed properly and that Louise would have guidance as she navigated the responsibilities of ownership. Ivar's own experience with inherited property made him the natural choice. He inherited Bridwell Park, a historic estate in Devon, and later sold it after realizing that the maintenance costs were unsustainable. He learned hard lessons about what it means to own a piece of history, and he has reportedly shared those lessons with Louise, helping her understand the financial realities of property ownership without diminishing the emotional significance of the gift. The relationship between Lord Ivar and the Edinburgh family is unusually close for royal circles. In an interview, Ivar described Prince Edward and Sophie as genuine friends, not just relatives. He noted that Sophie stays at his home when she is in Devon, and that they speak regularly. He described his goddaughter Louise as a young woman of character and integrity. He mentioned that they text each other often, but that he tries not to intrude on her busy university life. This is not the distant formal relationship that characterizes many royal godparent arrangements. This is a genuine connection. And it matters because it means Louise has someone outside the immediate family who can give her honest advice, not palace spin, not what the family wants her to hear, just the truth from someone who has walked a similar path. There is another layer to this story that has gone largely unreported. The wren's nest may not be the only property that Louise stands to inherit. Sources suggest that the Queen also made provisions for Louise to receive a portion of the Balmoral estate's agricultural land, along with the carriage-driving facilities that she has used for years. This would make Louise one of the largest private landowners among the younger royals, a distinction that carries both privilege and responsibility. The land generates income through farming and forestry leases. That income could provide Louise with financial independence, allowing her to pursue a career of her choosing without relying on the sovereign grant or on handouts from her father. Financial independence is rare among royals. Most of them rely on the family trust or on allowances from the king. Louise, if these reports are accurate, would not need to. She would have her own income from her own land. That is exactly the kind of quiet, practical gift that Queen Elizabeth excelled at giving. The role of Prince William in this inheritance cannot be overstated. As the heir to the throne, William has a say in how Balmoral properties are allocated. He could have objected to Louise receiving the wren's nest. He could have argued that the property should be kept for his own children or for use by senior working royals. He did not. According to multiple sources, William actively supported Louise's inheritance. He reportedly told family members that the Queen's wishes should be honored without question. This is significant because it suggests an alliance between William and Louise that could shape the future of the monarchy. William is the future king. Louise is the quiet granddaughter who has won everyone's respect. Together, they represent a new generation of royals who prioritize duty over drama, service over self-promotion. The wren's nest is more than a cottage. It is a symbol of everything that Queen Elizabeth valued: loyalty, humility, hard work, and love of family. It is a place where Louise can escape from the pressures of royal life, just as her grandmother did. It is a place where she can raise her own family someday, continuing the tradition of Balmoral as a sanctuary for the Windsor dynasty. And it is a message to the rest of the royal family that the Queen's trust was not for sale. It could not be bought with flattery or secured through manipulation. It was earned through years of quiet decency. Louise earned it, and now she owns a piece of her grandmother's heart in the form of a small cottage in the Scottish Highlands. What does Lady Louise's future look like with the wren's nest, now reportedly hers? At 22 years old, she is in a position that few young people ever experience. She owns a property on one of the most private royal estates in Britain. She has the support of the future king. She has a godfather who understands the complexities of aristocratic inheritance. And she has a reputation as the most down-to-earth member of the royal family, a reputation she has done nothing to cultivate and everything to deserve. The wren's nest is not just a wedding gift. It is a foundation. It is the Queen's final blessing, and it is a sign that the monarchy's future may rest not with the loudest voices, but with the quietest ones. The reports linking Louise to fellow St. Andrews student Felix de Silva Clamp have not been confirmed, but they suggest that the wedding gift angle of the wren's nest may become relevant sooner rather than later. Whether or not Louise marries soon, the cottage gives her something that few young royals have: a place of her own. Not a grace and favor apartment in Kensington Palace, not a wing of a royal residence, her own front door, her own garden, her own hills to walk. The Queen knew what she was giving. She gave Louise the gift of privacy in a family where privacy is almost impossible to find. There is a final piece of this story that deserves attention. The wren's nest, according to some reports, contains a small room that the Queen used as a writing study. In that room, there is a desk where Elizabeth sat and wrote letters, read reports, and planned her days. That desk, sources say, remains exactly as the Queen left it. Louise has reportedly decided not to change a single thing. She will use the desk herself. She will write her own letters there. She will continue the tradition that her grandmother began. That is the difference between inheriting property and inheriting a legacy. Anyone can receive a house. It takes someone special to understand that they are also receiving a responsibility. Lady Louise did not ask for the wren's nest. She did not campaign for it. She did not leak stories to the press or position herself as the Queen's favorite. She simply lived her life with dignity, worked hard, loved her family, and asked for nothing. That is why the Queen chose her. That is why William supported her. That is why Lord Ivar Mountbatten guides her. And that is why the wren's nest is not just a cottage in Scotland. It is proof that in the British royal family, character still matters. The quiet granddaughter nobody expected to matter now has a place that matters more than anyone outside the palace walls ever understood. Queen Elizabeth saw something special in this young woman. Now the rest of the world is beginning to see it too.